Welcome to another edition of the Rapid Reaction video series. My name is Tim Montgomerie, recently joined the reaction team, and I really do hope you are enjoying these video conversations. If you are, please do rate and click on YouTube. That really helps drive traffic to these videos and lets other people enjoy them. And if you aren't familiar with our general website, do please visit the Reaction Life website, where you'll see a whole array of articles and features on these political and other topics. And we're running a free month trial subscription at the moment, so you can have a look at what we're producing without having to commit any money at this stage. So please do that. But I'm really delighted today to be joined by a friend from across the pond, Henry Olsen. Hello, Henry.
Hello, Tim.
Now, when did we first get to know each other, Henry? I think it was, well, I know exactly when it was. It was in the immediate aftermath of Mitt Romney's election defeat, which was 2012. Is that right?
Yes. That's right. We communicated after that, and I flew over the pond, and we met in March of 2013.
And I remember, because this was obviously well before Brexit, well before the populist revolution, but I felt in you, I had a sort of a kindred spirit, because I watched a roundtable you were taking part in the immediate aftermath of Mitt Romney's defeat to Barack Obama. And you were talking about the fact that the big reason Romney had lost was the failure of a lot of voters to think of the Republican Party and the Republican candidate in particular to identify as with people like them. And it was that sort of, it was an early sign of populism, and that had been a topic I've been interested in exploring for a long time. And suddenly I'd found someone on the other side of the Atlantic who was thinking similarly, and it's been great to be friends with you ever since. But those who don't know you are now a Washington Post columnist. You're senior fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, one of Washington's big sort of conservative leaning, I think would be fair to say, think tanks. I also have a nickname for you, which is Sustato, partly incorporating your love of English football, Tottenham Hotspur fan, unfortunately. But you're also the perfect person for those who are on Twitter to follow Henry Olsen. Because Henry is on a big election nights, he grinds the numbers for you, and often ahead of other people will tell you what is going on in those elections. So Henry is a must follow on social media. Just do not follow him for football information, because he doesn't really understand. Henry,
I'm American. I'm a hopeless romantic.
Well, believing in Spurs that they'll ever win anything, you certainly are. Henry, what I wanted to talk to you about today, though, was just getting a little update on where Donald Trump's sort of position and status in American politics and the Republican Party is. I think for the average British news consumer, the big image in their mind is still of the Capitol Hill riot events of early January, still him in denial about the election result. But how popular is he still with the average Republican voter? Is it as high as it was? Is there signs of decline, or is he still by far the most powerful figure in the Republican Party?
Well, it's kind of a little of all of those things. He remains very popular. Very little sign of decline of popularity if you ask favorable versus unfavorable. So he's clearly of overwhelming popularity among people who will tell pollsters they're Republicans. But that doesn't mean that he has exerting a whole lot of power. You know, that Trump has gone uncharacteristically silent for the last 6 months. When he surfaces, he is a cauldron of resentment. He still is in denial about the November election, still calls the election rigged and fraudulent and so forth. And I think partly as a result of that, if you look at surveys, you find he may have 80-something% popularity among Republicans. But if you ask who do you want to see to be the next nominee, maybe 50% will say Trump. And there was a survey that came out of conservative activists this weekend where Florida Governor Ron DeSantis had slightly more support among the survey takers than Donald Trump, both well over 70%. But so what I'd say is he's popular, but every day he's out of the White House, his influence ebbs in the party just a little bit, and he's struggling to remain relevant when he's not in the Oval Office.
I'd love to get you back soon, actually, to talk about the Florida governor, because I suspect lots of what viewers of this series and generally just don't realize how popular the Florida governor has become amongst Republicans because of his handling, quite a sort of more hands-free handling, but nonetheless successful handling of the COVID drama. But on the specific issue of the election result, how many people, what's the sort of general feeling, not amongst of Republicans about Trump, but of the election result? Are they still, I think I saw polls where 50-odd% of Republican voters did accept the former president's view that the election was indeed stolen. And he's recently talked about, he thinks he's going to be restored, doesn't he, at some point to
That's certainly something that was leaked to a New York Times reporter. It's not been confirmed, but intimates of the president supposedly told Maggie Haberman of the New York Times that he believes he'll be restored, which is, of course, lunacy. I mean, it really is utter lunacy. There's no prospect of that happening. A majority to 60% or so of Republican voters will tell pollsters they believe that the election was stolen, that they believe in President Trump's lies. That's, I think, distressing, and I am not happy that even Republican opponents of Trump are doing little to debunk people of that notion, because they won't engage the fatuous arguments that Trump makes. He makes assertions, but if ever queried to produce evidence, the evidence he produces is so laughably insufficient that I think that you could begin to make headway if you had the courage to actually take him on. But so far that hasn't happened. And so you have a Republican Party where half to 2/3, depending on the poll, say that they believe the election was stolen.
Which is an extraordinary cancer, a sort of, biting into your democracy, really, and your faith into your democracy. But there was quite a bit of coverage in the UK of Liz Cheney recently losing her place in the leadership group of the Republicans in the House of Representatives. And that was very much seen as her saying the election was rigged, and the fact that she was ousted, the election wasn't rigged was her argument. And the fact that she was ousted was a sign that the Republican Party was still in denial. Do you buy that explanation of what happened to her, or how much was the sort of the other explanation that the problem was not necessarily that those who wanted her ousted were denying the outcome of the election, but she was just raising the issue so much it was becoming a divisive, she was increasing the divisions rather than seeking to address them?
It's more the latter than the former. And she hurt herself even more by criticizing people within the Republican conference, that she was caught saying that a 4-page memo by the chairman of the Republican Study Commission, which is a part of the subgroup within the Republican conference that contains about 60 to 65% of the conference, and including the swing votes who kept her as leader when she was initially challenged. She called this rather mild document of how to make the party more working class Marxist in tone, because when push comes to shove, she's an old line Bush Republican who doesn't want to adapt to the current questions that people want answered. In other words, she's vociferously anti-populist. And it's the combination of those things that really led to her ouster, rather than simply her denial, her rejection of Trump's rejection of the election result.
So a little bit more complicated than perhaps some British media reported that issue.
Oh yes, well, and many American media. This is a case of where most mainstream media, both in Europe and in the United States, remain blinded by let's be polite and say, distaste for President Trump.
Yeah.
And very few actually know conservatives and Republicans. The Republicans they tend to know tend to be Republicans who echo their views of the world. So, which is to say, they grossly exaggerate the views of Cheney-esque Republicans. And most people who are conservative really won't talk openly to mainstream reporters because they see no advantage in it.
Yeah. You made a few minutes ago, before I took us down the Liz Cheney alley, you said that the main reason that you thought that Trump's popularity was beginning to slowly, but noticeably decline amongst Republicans was his, he's no longer in the White House. Is that the main explanation? Because you could posit the alternative thing that it's also his absence from social media is the killer for him. He famously is banned from Twitter. He's still not on Facebook or YouTube. That must be killing him.
I'm sure it is, and that's certainly what leaked reports say. But on the other hand, he did very briefly have a Facebook page, which was basically a blog, not a Facebook page, a website, which was basically a blog.
Yeah.
And they shut it down after a month because nobody was visiting it. And he
Really?
he has no problem getting others to retweet his statements. So if he issues a statement, he doesn't have Twitter, but his followers have Twitter. The problem is he's not president. So he can't make news with his statements and dominate the news cycle anymore. And it completely flummoxes him because while most politicians go through most of their careers unable to fully own the news cycle, this is a guy who for 5 years basically was able to make the media jump to his command, and now he can't do it. And he doesn't know how to do it when he doesn't have either a campaign or a public office. So I think he's really lost at sea with that respect. The other thing about him being out of the Oval Office is that it gives space for people to identify themselves and create their own brands. Ron DeSantis doesn't have to be constantly asked about something that Donald Trump said. He can stand on his own. All of the people who want to succeed Trump don't have to react to Trump's news of the day. And that means that people who are in the sweet spot of the Republican Party, which is, say, Trump policies, but not Trump's character, are able to start identifying themselves as such. And that's weakening him too, because people are saying they don't have to back Trump personally in order to be in opposition to the liberal, socialist, secularist, to use phrases that often would be used in Republican circles. You can be opposed to all of those things and you don't have to be a Trump acolyte anymore. And that's something that's increasingly dawning on more and more Republicans.
So if Trump is in a little bit decline, final question to you, Henry, how's the Republican Party doing? It seems like you're in a constant cycle of elections in America. As soon as one is finished, the next one begins. And so my question is only feed that obsession. We're only 6 months into the Biden presidency, but inevitably it's, you have the whole of the lower house of representatives up for grabs next November, 18 months time. The Senate, which is 50-50 at the moment, will also have a third of its members up for election. So it's in balance. What Sir Stato of election knowledge, what's Sir Stato's view of at this early stage, what's likely to happen in those elections?
It's pretty clear that historically the out party gains in midterms, that there's only been a couple of examples in the last 80 so years where the president's party gained seats. And I think it's only 5 out of like 32 seats midterms where going back to the Great Depression, where they didn't lose more seats than they have their majority. That basically they have the way we calculate it isn't the way you calculate it. When we say you have a 5-seat majority, it means you have 5 more than the majority. You have 223 seats when 218 are needed.
We obviously do it the correct way, but yeah, go on.
Yes, no, I understand that. We got into a little tussle a little over 200 years ago about matters like this and rounders versus that absurd game that never ends that you anyway.
Cricket.
But so historically, Republicans should gain more than 5 seats. Um, if you look at the polls right now, you wouldn't see that. You would see Biden at a job approval rating that would be consistent with Democrats maintaining a narrow majority. But historically, the slippage happens in the even numbered years that people in America tend to give an incumbent president in the new party the benefit of the doubt. And then over time, that slips away. There was a Democratic data analyst, not a Republican, not me, but a Democratic data analyst, David Shore, who said that one should expect to lose 5%, close to 5 percentage points from what your party got during the presidential year. And that would give the Democrats around 47 to 48% of the vote, and would mean that they would probably lose 10 to 20 seats in the House.
So
I personally believe, although the Senate does not always go in the same way, because of course it's not a national election, it's, as you mentioned, only a third of our 100 seats are up. But given the seats that are up, which is say four of the states, which were basically 50-50 decided by 1% or less. Actually, now that I think about all five of the 6 states have competitive races on the ballot. And I think if you saw a slippage of 4 to 5 points nationally among the Democrats, you'd see it in these 50-50 states, and that would give Republicans a 52 to 48 advantage in the Senate if those historical numbers were applied evenly across those states.
And how serious would that be for if the Republicans, just say the Republicans win back control of the Senate, or more likely you think they'll win the House of Representatives. Let's just say they'll win the House of Representatives. How much of a sort of handcuffing of the Biden presidency would that amount to?
Well, it would completely end any ability to do anything that the progressive base wants through the legislative process. There's no prospect that a Republican majority would do something that the Democratic left, the left wing of the Democratic Party would want. So what that does is it puts Biden in a difficult position. If he tries to satisfy the Democratic left through regulatory action that allows him to do something for his base to excite them going into his reelection, but it also means that those actions can be challenged in court, which of course comes back to a Republican-dominated Supreme Court eventually. And it also means that he would be positioning himself to the left rather than to the center in the runout. So how Biden would react would be very key to his ability to win re-election, assuming, as he is actually sending signals, that he would like to run for re-election as an 82-year-old man.
Well, that I think is probably a very good topic if you'll come back, which we can discuss on another occasion. But for the moment, Henry, thank you very much for joining us from your home in Washington, D.C. No, just outside Washington, D.C., aren't you? You're in Virginia.
Yes, I am in Old Town Alexandria.
Lovely. Well, I look forward to visiting when all these ridiculous restrictions on all of us are finally released. So
yes, and we are eager to host a party. We're even thinking of brewing tea the correct way in your honor.
Well, I have to say, given my experience of visiting your fine country, which I love in so many ways, your skills at tea making are not that great. So as much as I love you, I will be coming to see you rather than having in expectation of a very good cup of tea.
We'll see if we can change that once you're here.
My favorite example on the tea making front is our mutual friend, Joseph LeConte. Yeah. And I kept on going on to him about the importance of the water being boiling hot before you could get real tea. And so he decided that he would get rid of the intermediate process of the teapot. And he put the tea bag straight into the kettle and boiled it from there. It was the most disgusting cup of tea I have ever had. And I have never let Joe forget how bad.
Well, in our household, the water is boiled separately and the tea is loose leaf.
Wow. That sounds promising. So maybe I've judged you too quickly. Henry, thank you so much for your time today. And thank you most of all to all of you for watching this video. I hope you're enjoying this series that we're producing. Do leave comments either on Twitter or below the YouTube. We may not respond to all of them, but we do try and read all of them. We love your comments. We take them on board. And if you have ideas for how we can improve these videos or topics that you would like to discuss, then please leave your comments. We value them a great deal. But for now, from Henry in Virginia and me in Salisbury, Wiltshire, Old World and New World, goodbye.